Question number 3 I was asked is, what is the origin of my moral codes? I think the answer to that is, again, it's not hard for an observant Jew to answer that. It may be hard to observe it, but it's not hard to answer the question. Our moral code is based on the 5 books of Moses. 5 books of Moses were given by God via Moses at Sinai in the year 2448 after creation. We are now in the Jewish calendar in the year 5776, so some 3,300 and some years ago. We had the greatest revelation ever known to man, with almost 3 million people standing in the Sinai desert at Mount Sinai, where Moses came down, and then God came down for the first 2 commandments. Moses continued with the final 8 and gave us a moral code. It's called the Torah, the Old Testament. You can never understand the Old Testament just from reading the verses. When Moses taught the Old Testament at Sinai to the Jewish people the first time, he did it with an oral explanation, because otherwise there's half the verses you wouldn't be able to understand. And that oral tradition has been passed down ever since with the Jewish people, which is why, ironically, it's interesting that there are peoples of other faiths who claim to understand the biblical verses or interpret it in ways that Moses never intended it to be interpreted that way. And they never took the opportunity to ask the experts, in other words, the people who actually got it at Sinai and transmitted it from generation to generation to their children and children to their children until today. And ask them, how did you guys understand the translation of these biblical verses? Because without the oral tradition given by Moses at Sinai, the biblical verses of the 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, there's no way to understand them. And so my moral code is the Torah. And even though God already started the relationship with the first Jew, which was Abraham, and his wife Sarah, which was almost, was quite a few hundred years prior to the giving of the Torah at Sinai, nevertheless, the actual code was given to us at Sinai, and we've kept it, or at least tried to keep it, ever since.